Well, hello, that's me again. Today is January 14th. It is the end of the weekend, and if you think so that I'm here just to discuss the current events, which is still important, of course, it's a little bit a different approach I want to take today. And I want to immediately explain that whenever I read that people say, you know what, oh yeah, you know what, we Europeans don't judge us harshly, we are all, marionettes and, lapdogs and controlled by the United States. Yeah, I kind of get it, but again, we all choose our fate. Basically, we make our choices. We need to live the consequences of our choices, but this is all about choices. So yes, we might go deep into the philosophizing about the hoi polloi and that basically democracy, Western democracy, is not a modern control of oligarchy, which is true, or that corporate media are completely corrupt and serve only the ruling clique, which is also correct. I mean, there are no normal people practically working in the legacy corporate media, but still we make our choices, and there are one of those examples, obviously Russia, which basically found in itself, within itself, the organization and people such as, of course, you know them, like Vladimir Putin, who stepped up and just basically wrote the history properly. But when you look at the Europeans, it's kind of, yeah, it's over, guys. And people say, oh, you're saying this thing for whatever reasons. No, it's just the objective fact. And today we want to basically dip a little bit in the history of the issue. And I want to start with something which RIA News, a major news organization in Russia, largely respected despite having gaps here and there periodically, but basically still very important organization. It's a legacy one from Soviet times, but now it's obviously independent. But look at what they inform us when you look at this, and it's just like, my gosh, so true. And remember, I speak about this for years, and what I talk about that constantly, you can look through my videos for you will hear it periodically, that never again the foot of a Russian soldier will step on the European soil. And look at this. Well, it's incorrect title because it's machine translation. In reality, it should be in France. France as itself, as its government, cannot call for anything. It is completely degenerate, and we're not going to be going there. But the point is here, in France, they called on the Russian military to let Europe die itself. And they talk about a soldier from France called on Russian Federation not to liberate Europe again, but to let it die. This is precisely what the Russians are intent to do. And look at this. Europe is in a deep crisis due to incompetent leadership, but there is no need for Russia to liberate it, as in the past. A former soldier of the French army who is visiting Donbass on a humanitarian mission told RIA Novosti, don't, because the Europeans themselves are fools. Let them deal with their elites themselves. Do not a single Russian soldier should be sent. You don't have to release anyone. No, these countries will die on their own, gradually, Nicolas said. And let me put it this way, it is not accidental that most of those wise thoughts from the Westerners, from Western Europeans, you hear, are often from the military, primarily from the military. Now, there are obviously all kinds of the political people who also sometimes, have the lucid thoughts. But here's Nikolai, and that's what he says next. And he says, he also added that the European Union is a duplicate of Soviet Union, but the ideal of Europe is LGBT. In turn, the economy of the European Union breaks down because the leadership of the countries is incompetent and unqualified. We know that. I write about this. I wrote 3 books about it. And he says, a new world will rise at the gates of Russia. The former countries of the third world are rising, and the new world order is unfolding. Those who were the most advanced, the Europeans, will become the poorest. And actually, he is correct, because this is happening as I talk to you. And most Europeans who are not completely brainwashed, they will basically tell you this. They will confirm this, and they will tell you also the fact that there's no democratic process, or basically everything is run by the oligarchy. So, and he said that, soldiers, the soldiers in NATO serve only United States, which is true. And what is very important here, which I also constantly making emphasis upon, is that fact that the whole history is being rewritten precisely to basically accommodate the American-centric view of the 20th century. Although militarily United States, while important, especially in the Pacific War, it in both World War I and World War II got into the wars which were deciding the fate of the world, basically by the end, when the fighting was done primarily by somebody else. This is just the kind of modus operandi for the American imperialism. Not to say that, of course, that there's nothing good and no good intentions. Absolutely. For Russians, people like Eisenhower, or Bradley, they are known figures. They are revered, especially Dwight Eisenhower. So it's complex situation. But obviously, the United States have been together with its vassals from the Western Europe in the rewriting of the history of the 20th century. Plain and simple. They were removing basically Russians and Russia as an agent, other than pretty much exposing Russia as the Mordor in the complete, madhouse with killing, I don't know, 1 billion Russian people, and Gulag has been, filled with another 2 billion of Russian people. So despite this absurdity and despite this absolute mathematical illiteracy, for example, sadly, I have to say it, I repeat it again, and I mention it in the book when basically Colonel Douglas MacGregor repeats this absolutely insane claim by some moron from Oxford. He's British, but he spent his life in Poland, and he Polonized himself to the utmost, and he started to basically invent the numbers and facts about, like, Stalin executing 1 million soldiers of the Red Army, and the fact that, of course, that even the Guardian, liberal, anti-Russophobic, publication had to say about his books. I don't remember the name of the guy. He's nobody in real history, and he's no military professional. But they said that, dude, I mean, next thing you know, it's all about Poland. And when you have the wife is Polish and you live in Poland all your life, so you become Polish and you hate Russians and you rewrite history. So that's pretty much it. And this is a sad situation. Yes, we all know that Auschwitz have been liberated by Obama's uncle. So we know that. And this was not Freudian sleep, actually. This is how they think about themselves. And to demonstrate to you what Nicolas says and why I insist that never again the foot of the Russian soldier will be on the soil of the Europe. Let them freaking die. I agree with that, so, and because no matter what Russians do, they will still be accused of being, whatever. They will invent that Russians raped 2.5 billion German women, and so things of this nature. So you would expect it, especially from the graduates of the history departments in Oxford. But here is the thing which, look at this. Let me put it this way. If nobody knows what is that, let me put it this way. It's Bulgarian city of Plovdiv. And this is the monument called Alyosha to the liberators of the Bulgaria during the operations of the liberating of Balkans by the Soviet Red Army. So, and it stays there in memory of the thousands of Soviet or Red Army troops who died liberating Bulgaria, from Nazis. And then, of course, we have also this. This is already famous monument on the Shipka Pass, also in Bulgaria. This one is dedicated to the thousands of Russian imperial soldiers who died there, liberating Bulgaria from Turks during Russian-Turkish War. And Bulgarians kept this thing too. So what I want to say is most likely we need to discuss this situation with his Bulgarian defense minister, and then I will explain to you what Russia has to do. And so here we are. So Mr. Tagarev, who is Bulgarian defense minister, He says, while visiting the United States and talking to Atlantic Council, a bunch of the morons who sit there and invent all kinds of things basically to rewrite the history, he talks about that history books must be cleared of facts, giving rise to appreciation for Russia. Absolutely, I agree. Bulgarian textbooks should be absolutely rewritten this way, because we know that in Shipka Pass there were American and British soldiers who fought there. Although, let me tell you, there are, if you want to look it up what is happening there, look up the name of the Alois Magahin and New Lexington, where Bulgarians celebrate this American correspondent, because he was attached to Russian army, which was liberating Bulgarians. But never mind. So Defense Minister Todor Tagariev, who is on the 5-day visit to the United States, asked for the history curriculum to be cleared of facts that can give rise to appreciation for Russia's role in the past. He basically exposed here, and he gave exactly the modus operandi of the history departments in the US Ivy League and all those think tanks. Exactly. You remove the facts which make Russians look good in any way, and you then come up with the bunch of the shysters such as Max Boot or Julia Ioffe, who are supposedly Russia specialists and write garbage about Russians. And you see, that's how you do it. This is how you have to write books. For example, like the United States won the World War II. Well, those, Patsy Ruskis, they were just kind of sideshow, So Mr. Tagariev continues to say that, look at this. First, we must be able to present to the Bulgarian people history in its real sense, because generation after generation it is said that Russia is our friend and liberator, and we should be internally grateful to it for what it has done, although in history we have often been on opposite sides in various conflicts. No, I mean, throughout the 20th century, Bulgaria was Russia's enemy. They fought against Russia in World War I, and then they fought against Russians in World War II, I mean, supporting Nazi Germany. So, while not many of them fought there, but they were on the part of the Axis. And the second measure, according to Tagariev, is to be able to identify disinformation and propaganda campaigns. So, well, that's basically euphemisms for writing the honest history, but hey, you see what is happening? So my idea is, for example, especially if we go to Alyosha Monument, which they want to remove now, the basically city council of Plovdiv wants to remove it as the communist propaganda. So I think that Russia should actually buy out all of her monuments in the Europe, from let alone Bulgaria, and just move them back to Russia. Except for, obviously, while it's a hugely difficult operation to exhumate, or basically move all cemeteries of Russian Red Army soldiers who gave their lives for the liberation of Europe. But I think so this has to be also considered, because although it is usually not a good idea to disturb graves, but I don't think so Europe deserved any Russian graves or any Russian monuments. They have to be removed there completely, and there are voices now in Russia that indeed Russia has to buy out, because it was built by, communist government of Bulgaria, so it's Bulgarian creation, but Russia should really just buy it out and move it back to Russia. Bulgaria doesn't need any reminders of Russians ever being there. So when they will have their, and they will have at some point of time all other situations there, the fact that they are Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox, means absolutely nothing. So, I mean, let them deal with that. The same goes, for example, like Nicola talks about France, which we know it's have been Africanized, and they have huge Arab population, which doesn't share in the littlest any kind of the values which used to be French. Not anymore. We know what the values of the modern Europe are, and Europeans are quite content with that. So, and this is the other thing about conscious choices, because actually conscious choice is when you act on the moral principles, not when you, as per Lenin and the signs and properties of the revolutionary situation, you begin to act because of you becoming economically poor and you cannot live like this anymore economically, which is happening and will continue to increase only in Europe. But when you act out of your soul intent, and I don't think so they deserve it. So, and that's my position on this. And Russians are beginning to increasingly raise their voice on the fact that, yeah, just forget it, man, and let's not deal with these people. And truth is, I mean, as I already stated, Russia broke off with West, so-called, or whatever is left of Western civilization. Period. There will never be any contact until whatever exists there exists, and until it dies, because it might die. And when you look at basically what is happening throughout the whole Western civilization, you begin to see everywhere the signs of disintegration and complete decomposition of the governance of their moral, spiritual life. And just to give you an example, and I think it's great because I actually support Texas here, but look at this. We have this on Friday. We have Texas National Guard seizes control of border and blocks border patrol from area. Republican Governor Greg Abbott has seized the city park on the U.S.-Mexico border and has reportedly directed the Texas National Guard to impede federal agents patrolling area. You might ask why? Well, because actually the America's southern border is open. It really is not a border. It's actually, it allows into the United States pretty much the contingent of people who would vote for Democratic Party. Not that I like Republicans, they are the same corrupt, organization, but at least they try to deal with the issue of the national sovereignty of the United States, and they do which any normal government will do. Will they try to protect the border, especially from the gigantic inflow of illegal immigration. So the guardsmen were directed to block U.S. Border Patrol agents from patrolling near the border town of Eagle Pass. According to CBS News, guardsmen took over a public park in Eagle Pass where migrants who are caught crossing the border illegally are detained by U.S. Border Patrol. Then they refused to allow federal border agents into the park. Correct, because basically most of those people, and make no mistake, I do have sympathy for many people of those, from those countries, especially which are going through the Central America. There are some Mexicans, obviously, but those primarily people from Central America, including the gangs, they bring with you into the United States. They have no business doing this illegally. Hey, look at me. We waited for years, when we applied for our permanent residence and then to the citizenship. We did it legally. So if those people want to go to the United States legally, let them go through the procedure. But of course we understand this is the main contingent which will be providing also the voting bloc for the Democratic Party in the United States. And this is where they part ways. Republicans and Democrats. And this is the only thing you can support Republicans for, because they do want to control the border. For what reasons they do want to control the border? Is it for real for the high-level state strategy and requirements? Possible, but for surely they also do not want to be basically overwhelmed with the voices of people who probably won't even be able to speak English for years and who do not really care about what fundamental principles in American governance existed until recently. And those were not necessarily bad principles, no matter how they have been applied to the real life. But in general, speaking about this, there were some very many important issues which I, for example, applaud and treasure, such as Bill of Rights. And then suddenly you have millions of those people who go in, they don't care about Constitution, they don't care about, electoral process. They will be told to go vote for Democrats, period, because they have been left in, and they are primarily, overwhelming majority of them are economic immigration. They come here to get economic support. So, and as I already stated, I'm not saying that I do not sympathize with many of them. I do. The situation with the Central America is horrifying economically and in terms of law. And when you look at this, just the way it is. So, but here we are. We have this decomposition. So we have the Western Europeans just lying non-stop. Now you have a situation which is unfolding in the basically United States, when the state, Texas no less, begins to basically defy the federal authority, and you can understand why they do that. So, and this is the start of things which, for example, were happening in the Soviet Union, when the coward and the basically imbecile Gorbachev and his cabal of the traitors, they were basically felt impotent when the Soviet Union began to disintegrate, and they didn't do even the basic things. They didn't do their due diligence, which is required from any, even mediocre statesman. But they didn't do it, and Soviet Union collapsed. Of course, there are many other reasons why it collapsed, not just because of the incompetence of the central government in Moscow at that time, but that's just the way it is. But here we have also the situation with, famous NATO weapons, and of course we're going to the special military operation, and look at this. Suddenly, we already know Denmark basically delays the delivery of the F-16s to Ukraine, if it will exist then. Still, but here it is. In Kiev they announced the complexity of maintaining the F-16. Ignat, it will be very difficult to maintain F-16 fighters. Ukraine wants to completely switch to Western equipment, but it will be very difficult to maintain. In particular, F-16 fighters, said Yuri Ignat, advisor to the Air Force Command of the Armed Forces Ukraine. Ignat added that the infrastructure for NATO aircraft is typical, but each type of aircraft will be an additional burden on its operation. Well, what can I say? We know that there are whole 5 Ukrainian pilots training to flying F-16s. Danish F-16s obviously are not the new ones. I don't know if they are comparable. I do not even look into it anymore. Comparable to the original Netherlands, F-16s, which have been like 40 years old, and their airframes, who knows what is going on there with them. But the point is, as you can see yourself, they live in this bubble, the fantasy world in Ukraine, and yeah, the whole whatever the F-16s, Russian air defense is just rubbing their hands together with the Russian Air Force. We will know the number of the ace fighters, which will be many, from Russian Air Force as the result of the special military operation. But yeah, the Russians wouldn't mind shooting down F-16s. Of course, there is a competition between them and Russian air defense, but hey, yeah, sure. And then Ignat now admits that basically they cannot maintain them. Of course, they can't maintain them. All American equipment is capricious. It has to be maintained in the pristine conditions. The airfields and runways have to be cleaned from FOD, foreign object damage. So this whole thing is just like, yeah, there are many of it, including those F-16s. You have to have an extremely advanced and sophisticated infrastructure, not to mention the fact that the flying hour even of F-16 is still probably more cost-wise than, for example, flying hour of Su-57. So there you go. But hey, they say this, and then now they go, guess what? They go to the Chinese mode, old Chinese mode of this. Suddenly they begin to open cottage industry. It's today Ukraine urges people to make drones at home. Citizens should complete online courses and begin assembling drones for the needs of Ukraine military amid its conflict with Russia. The country deputy prime minister and digital transformation minister Mikhail Fedorov has said the goal of producing 1 million unmanned aerial vehicles in 2024, recently announced by Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, is realistic if the public helps the government. Fedorov insisted in a post on Facebook on Saturday. And then when you read this, well, that's just basically for anybody who have any kind of brains left. It is understandable that basically the Ukraine is disintegrating, and as we speak, and you already know the reactions of even the most propaganda outlets such as New York Times or Washington Post speaking about the fact that it's pretty much over for Ukraine. But here it is, Fedorov's idea reminds us of that. This is what it was. In China, during the Great Leap, forward in 1958, 1962, announced by Mao Zedong, and it was called the backyard furnace. And guess what? China needed to develop production of steel, and what they did, they suggested for their population of China to basically organize the cottage industry, backyard furnaces to basically melt the steel. And obviously, you look at this, was of course absolutely ridiculous. For starters, even when those furnaces worked, they worked so badly that the quality of steel was, which it wasn't quality, okay? It was garbage primarily, it was absolutely ridiculous quality of steel which couldn't be used anywhere realistically. So, and it was all this cottage industry and people's involvement, let's say this, when they obviously did contributed, this was one of the contributing factor in the severity of the Great Chinese Famine, because primarily peasant society have been now preoccupied with this cottage industry of melting steel in their backyards. But then, of course, it's very reminiscent of their campaign against sparrows, because the sparrows supposedly were eating the crops. And so Chinese killed a lot of sparrows, to the such degree that sparrows couldn't eat anymore those moths and all kinds of the mosquitoes, which actually killed the crops and the harvest. So you can see this, the vicious circle of the absolutely ridiculous social engineering ideas. And Mr. Fedorov, when he suggests that, they can make drones at home and make a million of them, why doesn't he suggest, for them to build something like cottage industry of assembling planes? Why not? I mean, come on. So, and when you look at this, it's just absolutely ridiculous. In related news, however, going back to China, and here is another absolutely, that shows you actually how idiotic the media and people who make those statements and think about it seriously are. The news itself, nothing wrong with the news. It's actually understandable because China is an economic giant, the largest economy in the world by far. And so what we have here, it's a very interesting situation that, yes, China buys gigantic volumes of the crude, and China ramped up stockpiling of crude last year, and it's also increased domestic travel following the removal of the pandemic era lockdowns, pushed oil imports up last year amid growing fuel demand. Jet fuel and gasoline consumptions were particularly high in China. Diesel demand, however, was relatively weak, but China, obviously, they did increase dramatically their standard of living. It is, in many respects, high-tech industrial economy, so they need fuel, they need energy. But look what actually comes here, just literally into your face, where you begin to scratch your thing, because what is implicit in this phrase is absolutely amazing. Economists forecast that jet fuel needs and demand from the petrochemical sector for high-end products used in the manufacturing of goods such as solar panels and electric vehicles will drive Chinese oil demand and crude imports this year. So the reason it's highlighted in yellow is the fact of the absurd. Yes, if you need high-end products to be produced, especially electric vehicles, by the increase into what is this, they call it, the dirty fuels, how much cleaner are your products then, such as solar panels, let alone the useless electric vehicles, which cannot be used realistically. Just look up any video on the Teslas just dying on the frost, in the frost conditions, or even just slightly below, 0 by Celsius, below freezing. So they die out there just in industrial quantities. They are not designed to drive in this condition. So, but they still need, guess what? They need the high demand of those petrochemical products to produce this. You look at this and just like, don't you understand that the people who think like that, it's almost, double think from Orwellian reality. In 1984, they combined two things which are incompatible. So you either choose the being clean energy and not harming the environment, or you choose the, good old, energy which burns itself. So, but guess what? they state those things. They don't even see the complete contradiction and mutually exclusive things here. But reality is, of course, yeah, actually all those electric vehicles are not clean energy. They require actually tremendous amount of the metals and energy, such as the fuel and such as the what have you, oil, crude, and to produce them. So I mean, what is the benefit then? No benefit whatsoever, except for the selling this crap to the idiots from the Silicon Valley and, for their virtue signaling, ideas. But that's about it. So, and when you look at this, yeah, guys, this is pretty much bad. It's over for the combined West but hey, what can I say? This soldier from French armed forces, he said it all. He said it all. He confirmed where people who do not know each other, we're separated by each other by thousands of miles. We have our own life experiences. And yet here we are. We speak in unison. And he is French, I am Russian, which is the American citizen and, American for all intents and purposes. And yet we speak the same thing. And as I already stated, never again the foot of Russian soldier will be on the European soil. So this is what I wanted to tell you today. And as always, guys, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel and support me through Patreon or buying a coffee or two. And just have the nice rest of your Sunday. And I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.